The silence in that marble lobby was deafening. 23 people watched as I placed the documents on Mr. Bradley's desk, my weathered hands steady despite everything. His face had gone completely white, and I could hear his pen hit the floor. Behind me, I knew she was there, my own daughter, but I didn't turn around, not yet. The security guard shifted nervously by the door. "Mrs. Hartwell," the manager whispered, his voice barely audible. "We weren't expecting you." I smiled then, the same smile I'd given her when she was 5 and thought she could lie about breaking my favorite lamp. "No," I said quietly. "I don't imagine you were. My name is Dorothy Hartwell, and I'm 74 years old. 3 months ago, I thought I was losing my mind. Today, I know exactly who I am and what my daughter tried to steal from me. Let me tell you how it started. The first sign should have been the way Jessica looked at my house. Not the way a daughter looks at her childhood home, but the way a real estate agent studies a property listing. I was brewing her favorite tea, Earl Grey with honey, the ritual we'd shared since she was little, when I caught her photographing my kitchen with her phone. She stood by the window where I'd taught her to make pie crust, and all I could see was calculation in her movements. "Mom, we need to have a serious conversation." That tone. I knew it well. The same voice she'd used to tell me about her husband's gambling debts, about the second mortgage, on their McMansion, about her son's college fund that somehow kept emptying itself. I set the bone china teacups on my kitchen table, the delicate set my grandmother had brought from Ireland over a century ago. Jessica didn't sit. Instead, she leaned against my counter, scrolling through something on her phone. "You can't keep living here alone." The words struck me like a physical blow. I'd been expecting another request for money, maybe a complaint about her teenage son's latest expensive hobby. Not this. "I beg your pardon?" Jessica looked up from her phone, and I saw a stranger wearing my daughter's face. Her yoga outfit probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Yet here she was, in my simple kitchen, declaring my life unmanageable. "You're declining, Mom. Last Tuesday you called me 6 times asking where you put your car keys. Mrs. Chen from next door said she found you standing in your driveway at midnight, confused about which house was yours." My chest constricted. Yes, I'd misplaced my keys, found them in the refrigerator, though I had no memory of putting them there. And yes, I'd been outside that night, but not confused. I'd been checking on my roses after hearing strange noises in my garden. Sounds like someone walking around my property. "Jessica, I've lived in this house for 48 years. I think I can manage." "You're not managing." She set her phone down with a sharp click. "I've researched some excellent facilities. There's a place called Sunset Manor. Beautiful grounds, social activities, professional staff around the clock. A nursing home. Senior living community," she corrected smoothly, like she'd practiced the phrase. "You'd have your own studio apartment, but with help when you need it." And Mom, she moved closer, her voice taking on that patronizing sweetness I'd begun to dread. "You could finally be free of this burden. No more worrying about maintenance, property taxes, all these overwhelming responsibilities." I stared at her. "This house has been paid off for 15 years, Jessica, and I handle my own responsibilities just fine." Something flashed across her face. Too quick to interpret, but it made my skin crawl. "Well, yes, but the costs are adding up. Utilities, insurance, upkeep. Mom, you're barely staying afloat financially." That's when I knew something was very, very wrong. Because I wasn't barely staying afloat. I'd been careful with money my entire life, worked as a school secretary for 35 years, saved every possible penny. My late husband's life insurance had been substantial. I lived modestly, but comfortably. "How would you know about my finances?" Jessica walked to my kitchen window, staring out at the garden where I'd taught her to plant tomatoes. "You've been struggling, Mom. You told me yourself about those confusing bank statements, about money disappearing from your accounts." My blood went cold. I had never told her about the bank statements. I hadn't told anyone about the mysterious withdrawals I'd been discovering, the accounts I didn't remember opening, the checks written to companies I'd never heard of. "I think you should leave now." She spun around, her composure cracking like old paint. Mom, please, I'm trying to help you. You called me 3 weeks ago, sobbing, saying you couldn't afford your medications. I have never called you sobbing about anything. You don't remember calling me about a lot of things lately. The accusation hung between us like smoke. I studied my daughter, my only child, the baby I'd rocked through countless sleepless nights, the girl I'd worked extra jobs to support through her expensive private college. And I realized she was systematically lying to me. Perhaps you're right, I said slowly. Perhaps I should explore my options. Relief washed over her features. Oh, thank God. I've already scheduled a tour of Sunset Manor for tomorrow afternoon. They have an immediate opening, and if we act fast, I said I'd explore my options, Jessica. I didn't say I'd made any decisions. Her mouth tightened into a thin line. The appointment is at 3 p.m. I'll be here at 2:30 to drive you. After she left, I sat in my quiet kitchen, watching steam rise from my untouched tea. The house felt violated somehow, as if someone had been moving through it while I slept, taking inventory, planning its dismantling. I walked to my bedroom and knelt beside the small fire safe hidden under my bed. Inside were my most important documents: birth certificate, marriage license, William's death certificate from 5 years ago. And beneath those, the manila folder I'd been filling with suspicious bank statements. I'd started the folder 3 weeks ago when I'd noticed irregularities. An investment account I didn't remember authorizing. Regular withdrawals to something called Home Care Solutions. When I'd called the bank, they'd informed me that my daughter was listed as my financial power of attorney. But I had never, ever given Jessica power of attorney over my finances. I picked up my bedroom phone and dialed the bank's customer service line. After navigating their automated maze, I finally reached a live person. Mrs. Hartwell, how nice to hear from you. This is Amanda from customer service. How can I help you today? I'm calling about the account ending in 3847. I have questions about some recent transactions. A pause. Ma'am, I see here that your daughter manages your banking now. She has full authorization. You might want to discuss this with her directly. When was that authorization granted? Let me check. The power of attorney was filed 4 months ago. You and your daughter came in together to complete the paperwork. 4 months ago, I'd been recovering from a nasty fall that had left me housebound for weeks. Jessica had been helpful then, bringing groceries, picking up prescriptions. I certainly hadn't been to any bank. Amanda, can you tell me what the weather was? Like that day? I'm sorry? Because 4 months ago, I had a broken wrist and couldn't drive. I was on pain medication that made me sleep most of the day. I find it interesting that I supposedly signed legal documents during a time when I could barely sign my own name legibly. Silence stretched across the phone line. Amanda, I need to speak with your manager first thing tomorrow morning, and I want a freeze placed on all transactions until I can appear in person with proper identification. Mrs. Hartwell, your daughter has legal authority. My daughter has forged documents, Amanda, and I'm about to prove it. I hung up and sat on my bed, staring at my hands. These hands had typed thousands of documents during my decades working in the school office. They'd balanced budgets, organized filing systems, caught discrepancies that others missed. They were older now, marked with age spots and arthritis, but they were still my hands, still steady, still sharp. That night, I didn't sleep. I spent the hours organizing every financial document I could find, making lists, creating timelines. By morning, I'd constructed a clear picture of what had been happening to me. By Tuesday morning, I'd made my decision. I dressed in my navy blue suit, the one I'd worn for my retirement ceremony, the one that made me feel like the competent woman I'd been for 74 years. I'd built a life in this house. I'd earned every dollar in those accounts through decades of honest work. And if my own daughter thought she could erase me like some confused old woman who'd lost her faculties, she was about to discover just how wrong she was. At 9:15 a.m., I called a taxi. By 10 cars, I was walking through the bank's front doors, asking to speak with the manager immediately. What I discovered in that office would shatter everything I thought I knew about my daughter. But it would also remind me of something I'd temporarily forgotten. that being underestimated is sometimes the most powerful advantage a woman can possess. The bank manager's office smelled like leather and lies. Mr. Bradley was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with the kind of nervous energy that comes from handling other people's life savings. He gestured toward the chair across from his mahogany desk, but I remained standing. I'd learned long ago that height gives you power, even when you're only 5'4" in sensible shoes. Mrs. Hartwell, please have a seat. I understand you have some concerns. About your accounts? I placed my purse on his desk with deliberate care and removed the manila folder I'd spent all night organizing. Mr. Bradley, I have questions about financial transactions that were supposedly authorized by me. Transactions I have no memory of making. He shifted in his chair, his fingers drumming against his desk pad. Well, as you know, your daughter Jessica has been managing your finances for several months now. She has full power of attorney, so… Stop. I held up my hand. Before you say another word, I want you to look at something. I opened my folder and pulled out a photocopy of my signature from a school district document dated last year. Next to it, I placed the bank's power of attorney form that I'd requested a copy of yesterday evening. Look at these signatures, Mr. Bradley. He leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. I watched his face as he compared the two documents. My real signature was firm, slightly slanted to the right, with a distinctive loop in the D of Dorothy. The signature on the bank form was shakier, more upright, with no loop at all. Mrs. Hartwell, that's not my signature on your power of attorney form. My voice was steady, but inside I felt like I was falling down a deep well, which means every transaction made under that authorization was fraudulent. Mr. Bradley's face had gone pale. He picked up the phone on his desk, then seemed to think better of it and set it down. Perhaps we should review your account. Activity together. For the next hour, he walked me through months of financial manipulation that took my breath away. Jessica had systematically moved money from my savings into investment accounts I'd never heard of. She'd written checks to Home Care Solutions, a company that had supposedly been providing me with daily assistance I'd never received. She'd even set up automatic payments to Sunset Manor for a holding fee on an apartment I'd never agreed to reserve. The worst part was how clever it had been. The amounts were never large enough to trigger obvious red flags, never enough to make me immediately notice unless I was looking carefully. Just a steady drain, like water leaking from a cracked pipe. How much? I finally asked. Mr. Bradley cleared his throat. In total? Approximately $47,000 has been moved or withdrawn from your primary accounts over the past 4 months. The number hit me like a physical blow. $47,000, nearly a year of my Social Security income. Money I'd saved from decades of brown bag lunches and secondhand clothes and never taking vacations. And you never once called to verify these transactions with me directly? Mrs. Hartwell, your daughter provided proper documentation. She explained that you were experiencing some cognitive decline, that you'd asked her to take over your financial management to prevent confusion or mistakes. I thought about Jessica standing in my kitchen, photographing my belongings, already planning the sale of my home. I thought about her scheduling appointments I'd never agreed to, making decisions about my life as if I'd already died. Mr. Bradley, do I seem cognitively impaired to you right now? He looked uncomfortable. No, ma'am, you seem quite sharp. Then I want every fraudulent transaction reversed immediately. I want Jessica's access to my accounts terminated, and I want to know what legal options I have. Mr. Bradley loosened his tie. Mrs. Hartwell, this is a delicate situation. Your daughter is your family. Perhaps if we called her in, we could resolve this amicably. My daughter has been stealing from me for months. The words tasted bitter in my mouth. She's been planning to put me in a nursing home so she can sell my house and take whatever's left. There's nothing amicable about that. I stood up and began putting my documents back in their folder. I want those transactions reversed by end of business today. And I want a written report of everything Jessica has done, including dates and amounts. Ma'am, reversing some of these transactions may be complicated. The investments, for instance. Mr. Bradley. I leaned forward, placing both hands on his desk. I worked in administration for 35 years. I know the difference between complicated and convenient. Don't mistake my age for stupidity." He nodded quickly. "Of course not. I'll start the reversal process immediately." As I walked back through the bank, I felt every pair of eyes following me. The tellers whispered behind their windows. The security guard watched me with curious concern. I held my head high and my folder tight against my chest. Outside, the October air was crisp against my face. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, breathing in the reality of what I'd just learned. My own daughter, the child I'd raised alone after her father died when she was 12, had been systematically robbing me while pretending to care about my well-being. I thought about all the times over the past months when Jessica had seemed so concerned, so helpful, bringing groceries I didn't need, insisting on organizing my medicine cabinet, asking pointed questions about my confusion and forgetfulness. She'd been building a case against my competency while stealing my money. My phone rang as I waited for the taxi. Jessica's name flashed on the screen. "Hi, Mom. Just calling to confirm our appointment at Sunset Manor this afternoon. I'll pick you up at 2:30, remember?" I closed my eyes, listening to her cheerful, lying voice. "Jessica, I won't be keeping that appointment." A pause. "What do you mean?" "Mom, we discussed this yesterday. You agreed that it was time." "I never agreed to anything, and I've just spent the morning at the bank learning some very interesting things about my finances." Silence stretched across the connection. Then, "Mom, you're confused. We've talked about this. Your memory hasn't been reliable lately." "My memory is fine, Jessica. It's my trust that was impaired. I don't know what you think you've discovered, but $47,000. I let the number hang in the air. Home Care Solutions, investment accounts I never authorized, a power of attorney I never signed. I could hear her breathing, quick and shallow. "Mom, I can explain everything. I was trying to protect you. You asked me to help manage things when you were getting overwhelmed. I asked you to pick up my prescriptions, Jessica. I never asked you to steal from me. I wasn't stealing. I was managing your money better than you could. Those investments will pay off. The home care was legitimate. Mrs. Patterson from next door was checking on you, and I paid her through the service. Everything I did was for your own good." Mrs. Patterson, my elderly neighbor who brought me soup when I had the flu, who helped me carry groceries. Jessica had been paying her through some bogus company and claiming it as professional home care. "And the nursing home deposit?" Another pause. "You need care, Mom. Professional care. You're not safe living alone anymore." "According to whom?" "According to me. I'm your daughter, and I can see what's happening to you even if you can't." The mask was slipping now. The sweet, concerned daughter was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. "Jessica, you have until tomorrow morning to return every penny you've taken. Otherwise, I'm calling the police." "You can't prove anything, and even if you could, no one would believe a confused old woman over her loving daughter who's been trying to take care of her." The line went dead. I stood on that sidewalk, holding my silent phone, and realized I was angrier than I'd been in years. Not just at Jessica, but at myself. For being so trusting, for not paying closer attention, for almost letting her convince me that I was the problem. When the taxi arrived, I gave the driver an address I hadn't visited in 5 years. The law office of Thomas Mitchell, the attorney who'd handled my husband's will. If Jessica thought she could gaslight me into submission, she was about to learn that some old women bite back. But first, I had a stop to make. Mrs. Patterson needed to know that her kindness had been weaponized against both of us, and I suspected she might have some very interesting things to tell me about my daughter's recent visits to my neighborhood. The war Jessica had started was about to become very real. And she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated exactly who she was fighting. Mrs. Patterson's front door was painted the same cheerful yellow it had been for 20 years. At 81, she moved with surprising energy, and when she opened the door, concern immediately creased her weathered face. "Dorothy, come in, dear. You look troubled." Her living room smelled like cinnamon and old books. I'd been here countless times over the years, But today, everything felt different. Helen, I need to ask you something, and I want the absolute truth. She settled into her recliner, sharp blue eyes studying me. Of course. What's wrong? Has Jessica been paying you to check on me? Helen's expression shifted from concern to confusion to something that looked like guilt. Well, Dorothy, I've always looked out for you since William passed. That's what neighbors do. Helen, please. Has my daughter been giving you money? She twisted her wedding ring. A nervous habit. I'd noticed for years. She offered to pay me, yes. But I refused. I told her friendship isn't something you charge for. Relief flooded through me. So you never took money from her? Not directly, no, but... Helen's voice trailed off. But what? She insisted on gift cards for groceries, said it was to make up for the extra food I brought when you were sick. And she paid to have my driveway resurfaced last month. A thank you for being such a good neighbor. My heart sank. How much were the gift cards worth? $500 each month. She said it wasn't payment, just appreciation. Jessica had been claiming $800 in monthly home care expenses, pocketing $300 while making Helen feel guilty about grocery help. Helen, did she ask you to report back about my behavior? Whether I seemed confused? Helen flushed. She was worried about you. She asked me to call if I noticed anything concerning. And that night, you found me in the garden? You said you heard someone walking around your house. You seemed very alert, not confused at all. You asked me to look at your rose bushes because you thought someone had been trampling them. Were they trampled? Yes. The soil around your kitchen window was churned up, like someone had been standing there. My blood chilled. Did you tell Jessica? I mentioned it, but she said you'd probably done it yourself and forgotten. She seemed so concerned about your memory. I thought about Jessica photographing my kitchen, taking mental inventory. Helen, did Jessica ever come to my house when I wasn't home? Helen's eyes widened. She said you'd given her a key for emergencies. She came by several times when you were out, checking to make sure everything was secure. But I'd never given Jessica a key. She must have taken my spare from under the ceramic frog by the back door. What did she do during these visits? She was usually there for an hour. Sometimes I'd see her carrying boxes to her car, but she said she was helping you declutter. Boxes. What had been in them? My jewelry box seemed lighter lately. Some of William's tools had vanished from the garage. I spent 20 minutes explaining everything, the forged documents, the stolen money, Jessica's systematic plan. Helen grew paler with each revelation. That sweet girl who brought me flowers every month? Helen whispered. She's been planning to have me declared incompetent. Helen stood abruptly, walking to her kitchen window that faced my house. Dorothy, last week I saw a man in a suit taking pictures of your house. When I asked Jessica if you were selling, she seemed very sad and said you might have to soon. A real estate appraiser. Jessica had been so confident she'd already started the selling process. Helen, if the police need to talk to you about this, will you tell them what you've told me? Of course. I can't believe I helped her without realizing. After hugging Helen goodbye, I took a taxi to the law office of Thomas Mitchell. I'd been here 5 years ago when William died. Today, I climbed those stairs with purpose. Tom looked exactly the same, silver-haired, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He stood when I entered, extending his hand warmly. Dorothy, what brings you here today? I opened my folder and got straight to the point. Tom, I need to know about elder abuse laws. Financial elder abuse, specifically. His expression grew serious. What's happened? I walked him through everything. Forged documents, stolen money, Jessica's manipulation. Tom listened without interruption, occasionally making notes. Dorothy, this is definitely financial elder abuse. It's a felony in this state, especially when committed by a family member. What are my options? Criminal charges, civil remedies to recover your money, a restraining order. He paused. But are you prepared for how difficult this will be? Going after your own daughter publicly? I thought about Jessica's cold voice. No one would believe a confused old woman over her loving daughter. Tom, if I don't stop her, She'll put me in a nursing home and sell everything I own. I won't let that happen. Then we need to move quickly. Jessica might accelerate her timeline once she realizes you're fighting back. Tom explained the legal process, the evidence needed, the timeline for prosecution. For the first time in months, I felt hope. When I left his office, I had a strategy. Tomorrow, Tom would file criminal charges. The bank would complete transaction reversals. I would change my locks. But first, one more stop. I walked to Sunset Manor, where Jessica had scheduled my appointment. The facility was exactly as she'd described. Beautiful grounds, cheerful common areas, expensive. Mrs. Romano, the admissions director, greeted me with practiced sympathy. "Mrs. Hartwell, we're so pleased to meet you. Your daughter has told us so much about your situation." "What exactly has she told you?" "That you're experiencing cognitive decline, that living alone has become unsafe. She's been very concerned." "And she's paid a deposit?" "Yes, monthly payments for 3 months. She wanted to ensure we had space when you were ready." Monthly payments for 3 months. Jessica had been planning this long before mentioning nursing homes to me. "Mrs. Romano, I won't be needing that apartment. Please refund whatever my daughter paid." The woman looked confused. "But your daughter explained you might have moments of clarity where you'd resist the transition. She asked us to be patient with any confusion on your part." Jessica had anticipated this moment, prepared these people to dismiss anything I said as confused protests. "Mrs. Romano, do I seem confused to you right now?" She hesitated. "No, you seem quite clear-thinking." "Then listen carefully. My daughter has been stealing money to pay for services I never requested. I'm perfectly capable of living independently. If she contacts you again, refer her to my attorney." I placed Tom's business card on her desk and walked out. As I waited for a taxi, my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Mom, I'm coming over tonight to talk. Don't do anything else foolish until we can discuss this calmly." I smiled grimly and typed back, "I'll be here." Jessica thought she was coming to manage another crisis, to smooth over my confusion with more lies. What she didn't know was that I'd spent the day building an army. Helen as my witness, Tom as my advocate, the bank manager as my ally. Tomorrow the real battle would begin. Tonight, I would let my daughter know exactly who she'd been underestimating. Some lessons are best delivered in person. Jessica arrived at 7:30 that evening, using her key like she owned the place. I heard her confident footsteps in my hallway, the walk of someone who still believed she was in control. I was sitting in William's old armchair when she appeared in the doorway. She'd dressed carefully, soft gray sweater, concerned expression, the performance of a devoted daughter dealing with a difficult parent. "Mom, we need to talk." I didn't stand up, didn't invite her to sit, just watched her take in the scene. Me in the chair, my manila folder on the coffee table, the stillness of someone who'd been waiting. "Hello, Jessica. How was your day?" She moved into the room cautiously, sensing something had shifted. "Mom, I know you're upset about the bank visit, but you don't understand the whole situation. Enlighten me." Jessica perched on my sofa's edge, leaning forward with clasped hands, her practiced posture of earnest explanation. "Everything I've done has been to protect you. You've been making mistakes with your money, forgetting important things. I had to step in before you hurt yourself financially." I opened my folder and pulled out the signature comparison. "Is this your idea of protecting me?" Her eyes flicked to the papers, and I saw the exact moment she realized how much trouble she was in. The concerned daughter mask slipped, revealing something much colder. "Mom, you signed that during one of your episodes. You don't remember because of your condition." "What condition, Jessica?" "Your memory issues, your confusion. Yesterday you called me 3 times about the same appointment." I reached for my phone, scrolled through my call log, and held up the screen. "According to this, I called you once yesterday. At 2:15, we spoke for 4 minutes about your son's college applications." Jessica's composure wavered. "Your phone doesn't show all the calls. Sometimes you hang up and call back immediately. Then the phone company will have records, won't they? Along with recordings, since you've mentioned them so specifically." She studied my face like she was seeing me clearly for the first time in months. Mom, what exactly do you think you've accomplished today? Quite a bit. I've had my money transferred back to accounts only I can access. I've changed the locks. Your key won't work anymore. I've spoken with Mrs. Patterson about your visits when I wasn't here. Jessica stood abruptly. You can't lock me out. I'm your daughter. I'm trying to help you. Help me what? Lose my home? My independence? My savings? Help you face reality. Her voice rose, the sweet tone finally cracking. You're 74 years old, Mom. You're declining. Whether you admit it or not, you need care. According to whom? According to me. I'm the one who sees you struggling. I'm the one who deals with your middle-of-the-night calls, your confusion, your inability to manage basic tasks. I leaned forward. Jessica, listen carefully. I have never called you in the middle of the night. I have never expressed confusion about basic tasks. The only struggling I've been doing is trying to understand why money was disappearing from my accounts. I wasn't lying. You forged my signature on legal documents. I was protecting your assets. You stole $47,000 from me. I was investing your money better than you could. You paid Sunset Manor 3 months in advance for an apartment I never agreed to rent. Jessica fell silent, chest rising and falling rapidly. In the lamplight, she looked younger, like the teenager who used to get caught sneaking out and would try any story to avoid consequences. Mom, even if you don't remember agreeing to these things, they're still the right decisions. You need professional care. This house is too big. Your money needs proper management. My money needs to stay away from you. Something dangerous flashed in her eyes. You can't cut me out completely. I'm your only family. When something happens, when you fall or get confused or have a medical emergency, who do you think will help you? The same people who've been helping me all along. My neighbors, my friends, people who care about my well-being instead of my bank balance. Jessica walked to my fireplace, staring at the family photos on the mantel. Pictures of her childhood, her wedding, her son, the history of a relationship I thought was built on love. You're making a mistake, Mom. I was handling everything quietly, keeping you safe. But if you want to do this the hard way— She turned back, and I saw a stranger wearing my daughter's face. I can have you declared incompetent. I can prove you're not capable of managing your own affairs. How exactly would you do that? Doctors' reports about your declining health. Mrs. Patterson's testimony about finding you confused in your garden. Bank records showing erratic financial decisions. Her voice was cold now, calculating. Your own behavior today, going to the bank with wild accusations, changing locks, paranoid delusions about family members stealing from you. I felt a chill of recognition. This was her backup plan. Jessica, there's something you should know about today's activities. She raised an eyebrow, waiting. I didn't just go to the bank. I also visited Tom Mitchell's law office. Remember Tom? He handled your father's will. He's now my attorney, and tomorrow morning he's filing criminal charges against you for financial elder abuse. The color drained from her face. You wouldn't. I also spoke with Mrs. Patterson at length. She remembers your visits to my house when I wasn't home. She remembers you carrying boxes to your car. She remembers the gift cards, which she's willing to testify were payment for false reports about my mental state. Jessica sat down heavily. Mom, please. I'm your daughter. You were my daughter. The person in my living room now is a thief who's been systematically destroying my life for her own benefit. I needed the money. The words exploded out, raw and desperate. David's gambling debts are out of control. We're going to lose the house. Marcus needs college tuition. I was drowning, and you're sitting here with more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. So you decided to take it. I decided to borrow it. I was going to pay it back once David got help, once things stabilized. By selling my house and putting me in a nursing home? You don't need this house. You're rattling around here like a ghost, living in the past. At Sunset Manor, you'd have activities, social interaction, professional care. I stood up slowly, my joints protesting, but my resolve steady. Jessica, I want you to leave now. Mom, please. I want you to leave, and I don't want you to come back. If you contact me again, I'll call the police. If you come to this house, I'll have you arrested for trespassing." She stared at me for a long moment, tears forming. But I'd seen her cry before when she wanted something. I no longer trusted any emotion she showed me. "You're going to regret this," she said quietly. "When you're sitting in this house alone, when you fall and no one finds you for days, when your mind really does start to go, you're going to wish you'd let me help you. Perhaps, but at least I'll be poor and alone by my own choice, not because my daughter stole everything I worked for." She walked to my front door, then turned back. "The offer stands, Mom. When you come to your senses, when you realize you need family, I'll still be here." "No, you won't. Tomorrow morning you'll be too busy dealing with criminal charges." After she left, I sat listening to the silence. The house felt different. Not empty, but peaceful. For the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. My phone rang at 9:15, Jessica's number. I let it go to voicemail. At 9:30, it rang again. This time, I answered. "Jessica, I told you not to contact me." "Mrs. Hartwell?" A man's voice, unfamiliar. "This is Detective Rodriguez with the County Sheriff's Department. Your daughter filed a report expressing concern for your welfare. She says you've been acting erratically, making false accusations." I smiled grimly. Jessica's backup plan was already in motion. "Detective Rodriguez, I'm glad you called. I'll be filing my own report tomorrow about financial elder abuse. Perhaps we should meet to discuss both situations." A pause. "Ma'am, your daughter mentioned you might say something like that. She's very concerned about your recent paranoid tendencies." "Detective, I'm 74, not stupid. If you'd like to determine my mental competency, I'm happy to submit to any evaluation. In the meantime, you might want to speak with my attorney, Tom Mitchell, and with the manager at First National Bank about the fraudulent transactions." Another pause. Longer this time. "I'll make some calls. And detective, my daughter has been entering my home without permission. If she shows up here again, should I call 911 or you directly?" "Call 911, ma'am. We'll sort everything else out." After hanging up, I made tea and sat in my kitchen, looking out at the garden where Mrs. Patterson had found me that night. I hadn't been confused. I'd been right. Someone had been. Watching my house, learning my routines, planning my downfall. But Jessica had made one crucial error. She'd assumed being old meant being helpless. She'd confused my trust with weakness, my love with blindness. Tomorrow, she would learn the difference between a victim and a survivor. Thursday morning arrived gray and cold, matching my mood perfectly. I'd slept better than I had in months, but I woke with the weight of what lay ahead pressing against my chest. Today, Jessica would face the consequences of her choices. Today, I would reclaim what was mine. I dressed in my navy suit again, armor for the final battle. At 8:30, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Detective Rodriguez, a man in his 40s with kind eyes and the patient demeanor of someone who'd spent years separating truth from fiction. "Mrs. Hartwell, I'm Detective Rodriguez. We spoke last night." I invited him in, offering coffee, which he accepted gratefully. We sat at my kitchen table while I walked him through everything: the forged documents, the stolen money, Jessica's systematic manipulation. He took notes, asked careful questions, and listened without the skepticism I'd feared. "Mrs. Hartwell, I have to tell you, your daughter was very convincing yesterday. She provided what appeared to be documentation of your declining mental state, medical concerns, incidents that suggested confusion. All fabricated?" "Most of it, yes. I made some calls this morning. Your doctor's office has no record of reporting cognitive decline. The incidents your daughter described don't match up with actual police reports or medical records." He paused. "She's built an elaborate fiction around your supposed incompetence." I felt vindicated, but also heartbroken. "Detective, how long do you think she's been planning this?" "Based on what I've seen, at least 6 months, maybe longer. This wasn't impulse. It was a methodical, long-term con. At 9:15, Tom Mitchell arrived, carrying a briefcase and wearing the expression of a man ready for war. "Dorothy, are you prepared for this?" I thought about Jessica's voice the night before. "When you realize you need family, I'll still be here." She still believed she could manipulate her way out of consequences. "I'm ready." The three of us drove to the bank in Tom's car. I sat in the back seat, watching my neighborhood pass by. Houses where I'd lived peacefully for nearly 50 years, where neighbors knew my name and my story. Jessica had tried to erase all of this, to reduce me to a confused old woman who needed managing. First, National Bank was busy with morning customers when we arrived. I walked through the front doors, flanked by my attorney and a police detective, feeling more powerful than I had in months. Mr. Bradley met us in the lobby, his face tight with professional concern. "Mrs. Hartwell, Detective Rodriguez, Mr. Mitchell, please come to my office." But I had other plans. "Actually, Mr. Bradley, I'd prefer to handle this matter in the main lobby. I think transparency would be appropriate given the circumstances." He looked uncomfortable, but nodded, gesturing toward a small conference area near the customer service desk. Several tellers and customers watched with curiosity as we gathered around the table. "Mrs. Hartwell," Mr. Bradley began, "we've reviewed the transactions you questioned yesterday, and we're prepared to—" "Mr. Bradley, before we discuss reversals, I want to know something. How many other elderly customers have had family members gain power of attorney through questionable means?" His face went pale. "I'm not sure what you're implying." "I'm implying that my daughter couldn't have pulled this off without help. Someone at this bank processed forged documents without proper verification. Someone approved transactions that should have triggered fraud alerts." Detective Rodriguez leaned forward. "Mr. Bradley, we'll be conducting a full investigation of your procedures. If we find systemic problems with how you handle elderly customers' accounts, this will become a much larger matter." That's when I heard the familiar click of high heels on marble. I turned to see Jessica walking through the bank's front doors, her face a mask of determined concern. She dressed for the part, conservative suit, worried expression, the image of a responsible daughter dealing with a family crisis. She stopped short when she saw our gathering, her eyes taking in the detective, the attorney, the bank manager's obvious distress. "Mom, what's going on here?" I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of every customer's attention. "Hello, Jessica. I wasn't expecting you. Mr. Bradley called me. He said there were some irregularities with your accounts that needed clarification." She moved closer, her voice taking on that patronizing tone I'd grown to hate. "Mom, why didn't you wait for me? You know how these financial matters confuse you." The silence in that lobby was deafening. 23 people watched as I placed my folder of documents on Mr. Bradley's desk, my weathered hands steady despite everything. His face had gone completely white, and I could hear his pen hit the floor. Behind me, I knew Jessica was there, my own daughter, but I didn't turn around. Not yet. The security guard shifted nervously by the door. "Mrs. Hartwell," the manager whispered, his voice barely audible. We weren't expecting you." I smiled then, the same smile I'd given her when she was 5 and thought she could lie about breaking my favorite lamp. "No," I said quietly. "I don't imagine you were." I opened my folder and pulled out the signature comparisons, the bank statements, the timeline I'd constructed. "Mr. Bradley, I'd like everyone here to see exactly what my daughter has been doing to me for the past 4 months. Mom, please." Jessica's voice was urgent now, desperate. "You're confused. These people are taking advantage of your condition." I turned to face her then, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time in years. "Jessica, the only person who's been taking advantage of my condition is you. And the condition you've been exploiting isn't confusion. It's trust." I spread the documents across the table so everyone could see. "Ladies and gentlemen, my daughter forged my signature on legal documents. She stole $47,000 from my accounts. She paid my neighbor to report false incidents about my mental state. She had a real estate appraiser evaluate my house without my knowledge. And she prepaid 3 months at a nursing home I never agreed to enter. The lobby had gone completely silent, except for Jessica's sharp breathing behind me. She convinced this bank to process fraudulent transactions by claiming I was incompetent. She convinced a nursing home that I needed institutional care. She convinced herself that stealing from her elderly mother was justified because she needed money for her husband's gambling debts. Mrs. Hartwell, Jessica tried one last time, her voice breaking. I was trying to help you. I was trying to protect you from making mistakes. I faced her fully now, this stranger wearing my daughter's face. The only mistake I made, Jessica, was trusting you with my love when you only wanted my money. Detective Rodriguez stepped forward. Jessica Hartwell, you're under arrest for financial elder abuse, forgery, and fraud. As the handcuffs clicked around her wrists, Jessica looked at me with something I'd never seen before, genuine fear. Mom, please, don't let them do this to me. I'm your daughter. You were my daughter, I said quietly. The woman being arrested is a criminal who happens to share my DNA. The crowd of customers parted as Detective Rodriguez led Jessica toward the door. She turned back once, her face streaked with tears that might have been real. Mom, I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I watched my only child disappear through the bank's front doors and felt something break inside my chest, not my resolve, but the last chain that had bound me to the person she'd become. Tom Mitchell squeezed my shoulder. Dorothy, you did the right thing. I did the necessary thing, I corrected. There's a difference. Mr. Bradley cleared his throat. Mrs. Hartwell, about your accounts. We'll have everything restored by end of business today, and we'll be implementing new procedures to prevent this type of fraud in the future. See that you do. Because if this happened to me, it's happening to other elderly customers. And next time, they might not have a Tom Mitchell to help them fight back. As we walked out of the bank, I felt the October sun warm on my face. My house was still mine. My money was still mine. My life was still mine, to live as I chose. That evening, Mrs. Patterson brought me soup, not because anyone paid her to, but because that's what good neighbors do. We sat in my kitchen, talking about everything except Jessica, and I realized something important. I wasn't alone. I'd never been alone. I'd just been temporarily blinded by the betrayal of someone I'd trusted completely. My phone rang as Helen was leaving. I glanced at the screen, a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Hartwell? This is Sarah Chen from Channel 7 News. We'd like to interview you about elder financial abuse. Your case could help other families recognize the warning signs. I thought about all the elderly people sitting in their homes right now, trusting children who might be stealing from them, doubting their own minds because someone they loved was gaslighting them. Yes, I said. I think I'd like to tell my story. Because sometimes the most powerful thing an old woman can do is refuse to be quiet about the truth. 3 months later, Jessica was sentenced to 2 years in prison and ordered to pay full restitution. I received letters from dozens of families who'd seen my interview and recognized similar patterns in their own lives. I never visited Jessica in prison. But I kept living in my house, managing my own finances, and proving every day that being 74 doesn't mean being defenseless. Some people said I was too harsh on my own daughter, but they didn't understand. I wasn't punishing Jessica for what she'd done to me. I was protecting the next elderly parent who might trust their child's love more than their own instincts, because that's what mothers do. We protect our children from becoming the worst versions of themselves, even when it's too late to save them, even when it breaks our hearts to do it.